Moving a group from the isolation of a clinical setting into an active, collaborative recovery meeting usually involves a lot of friction. But there is a clear, repeatable framework designed to remove that friction and make these sessions predictable and productive. For years, the traditional mental health system operated under the clinician's illusion. Staff often focused on acting as detached experts, monitoring symptoms, and treating illnesses in isolation from the individual's personal empowerment. The Wellness Self-Management, or WSM, group session offers a structural solution to that institutional barrier. It replaces open-ended clinical monitoring with a highly structured, interactive routine. To run this model, you need two things. First, the 57-lesson WSM workbook. Second, a willingness to step down from the role of medical authority and share power and control with the consumers. By following the program's strict three-phase architecture, facilitators naturally shed their defensive walls. You move away from the role of a distant caretaker to become an authentic, guiding partner in the recovery journey. Before you even open the workbook, there is a required mindset shift. Staff must actively lower their professional, emotional walls to adopt a subjective lens. While objective clinical data is still recorded, the subjective lens requires you to understand how the consumer personally experiences their situation. You have to value their specific fears, their motivations, and their worldview. Step 1 of the session architecture is the beginning. You start by asking the group to review points they took away from the last meeting and checking in on the action steps they were assigned to practice over the week. Then you introduce the new topic for the day. But before anyone reads from the material, you invite members to share their lived experiences and discuss why this specific topic matters. This serves a very specific psychological function. When consumers share their common experiences, those who have successfully coped serve as living role models for others in the room who might be struggling. Seeing a peer succeed provides direct proof that things can get better. It activates the first core pillar of recovery, hope, which builds upon the psychological stages of grief and growth mapped out by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. This opening routine systematically engineers hope by presenting the group with observable proof that real improvement is possible. Now we move to phase 2, the middle. Here, group members volunteer to read the important information section of the workbook out loud, laying down the clinical facts for the day's lesson. That text is immediately followed by a personalized worksheet. Participants are given quiet time to map those general clinical concepts directly onto their own unique life experiences. Looking at a consumer's cultural compass, you see why reflection requires a culture-centered approach. Beliefs learned from their community heavily influence their understanding of mental health. These cultural ties exert massive gravity on clinical choices, dictating if they prefer prescribed medications or traditional remedies. Facilitators must not rush this step to get back to the objective lesson plan. You must actively listen and validate these spiritual commitments and community practices as powerful coping assets. Honoring this client culture allows individuals to clearly advocate for themselves with medical providers. It positions their heritage as a vital source of resilience, rather than a barrier to treatment. The final requirement of the middle phase is translating that reflection into behavior. The group collaborates to plan an action step to practice outside the clinic. A successful action step must be a small, practical, and highly manageable task. Other members of the group actively participate here, offering suggestions and ideas based on their own attempts. There is a strict rule here. Facilitators cannot dictate the action step. The motivation to implement the plan has to come entirely from the consumer. Forcing a requirement contradicts personal empowerment, whereas a consumer-driven choice actively activates the third pillar of recovery, self-responsibility. This brings us to phase 3, the end. To close the meeting, the leader asks each participant to share one main point or helpful idea they took away from the lesson. The leader then gathers feedback on whether the pacing of the material felt too fast or too slow, and concludes by giving specific, positive reinforcement to the participants for their efforts. This structured wrap-up ensures that every member leaves the room with a concrete plan. Over time, taking and completing these small steps replaces systemic helplessness with real momentum and a firm belief in their own capabilities. By facilitating the session this way, you transition from observing symptoms to fostering genuine empowerment. The entire WSM curriculum is mapped out across 57 brief lessons, grouped into 3 chapters: recovery,
mental health wellness, and living a healthy lifestyle. Applied at 3 lessons a week, they complete the curriculum in exactly 19 weeks. The process culminates in the 4th and final pillar, helping the consumer find a meaningful role in their community. True psychiatric rehabilitation is achieved when an individual builds an identity, purpose, and life completely separate from their mental illness diagnosis.